Hello and welcome to part one of the Amigurumi bee. If you were a part of my beginner class, we are just going to go from the same instructions and I will go over how to do that in case you wanted to start or redo your bee at home. So we're going to start with the slip knot. The way I teach is you just stick out your index finger, you wrap the yarn around your finger twice, you take this back one and you put it in front of this one. And then you take the one that you just jumped in front of and you go around and tighten. And this is how you're going to cast on to your crochet hook. Now I am using a 6. You can use a 5, 5.5, 6, it doesn't matter. I am using a Bernat fluff yarn. It's a little bit different. Excuse me. I am filming outside. It is a randomly warm day and I have really bad spring allergies. So I apologize for the sound of my voice. But I typically use a Bernat Chenille, but this is a similar weighted yarn, but this one is easier for you to see the stitches while I work. So we are going to start with the chain 3, and for some beginners, you're going to want to chain 4 or 5. So that way when we go to slip knot, or slip stitch into the first chain that we created from the slip knot to create the circle, you will actually have room to be able to see the center of your chain. So in Amigurumi, we work in the round, and that means we create a circle, and we're going to be working out of the circle. So chain 1, and we're going to do 7 single crochets inside the center of our circle. So stab, grab, up, yarn over, pull through 2. Stab through the center, grab, pull through and up, yarn over, go through 2. Now in the UK, the single crochet stitch is actually called a double because there are 2 loops on your hook. I don't know why the United States uses different terminology for everything. Stab, grab, pull through and up, yarn over, and go through 2. Stab, grab, yarn up, yarn over, pull through, hold on. Stab, grab, yarn over, and pull through 2. Now I didn't keep count, so we're going to count our stitches. Our stitches are going to be these V's that you see on the top. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it looks like I'm working on my 7th right now. So stab, grab, pull through and up, yarn over, pull through. So now since we're at the end of our first round, we're going to slip stitch into that first chain that we made and connect it to make our first circle. And you will see the circle. And that is how we start pretty much any Amigurumi project. So before we start any row, we're going to chain 1. And now to make the circle bigger, we're going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch that you see. So we're going to get to 14. 1, 2. And that is an increase. The stitch, you're going to see this little V on the top. We're going to want to stab our hook through that so you can see the 2 on top of your hook. We're going to grab, pull through, yarn over. As you see, we're no longer working in the center. That is only for our very beginning row to establish the circle. So we're not going back into here. We're working on the stitches around the circle. We'll put 2 in here. Let me move this white paper. I think my camera's trying to focus on it. Work all the way around. And then when you get to the end, you should have 14 stitches. All right, I'm coming up to the last of the round. We're going to work into our last stitch, which is right here. So we'll do 1, 2 to make 14 stitches around. I'm not going into this because this is our chain 1 from that following row. So that is actually part of this chain right here. So we're going to stab our hook through here, slip stitch the second row closed. Now we're going to begin row 3. So row 3, we still going to make that circle bigger. So instead of doing 2 crochets into each stitch, we're going to increase every other stitch. So just like this, we're going to go to that first one, 1, 2, and then in the next stitch, we're only going to do 1. Now we got to increase again. So we're going to do 2 into here, 1, 2, and then we're going to do 1. And we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around, and I will meet you all back at the end. I'm coming up on that last stitch and chain again. So I have 2 that I must do in here to have 21 stitches in the round. So we don't go into this one because this is connected all to the same. We're going to connect our hook into that first chain that we did on that row and slip stitch them together, chain 1. Now on this row, we're only going to do a single stitch into each, or single crochet into each stitch. So you will just be doing 21 single crochets in this row. I'll do a few with you on camera and then I will meet you back at the end of this row. So stab, grab, pull through and up, yarn over, pull through. See how you can see each of these? And we're just doing 1 into each of these. All right, and I will meet you back at the end. All right, we are back at our last stitch that we must do. We aren't going to put our last stitch into this one because the first stitch on this row is actually coming from this chain. You can see how it's interconnected in that. So we don't want to do that, otherwise we will be increasing our numbers. So let's do our single crochet. And then we're going to put our hook into the first chain and we are going to slip stitch. Now we're not going to chain 1 yet because we're switching colors on this row. You'll see the difference between the plush chenille and then this other Bernat teaching yarn that I have. But to switch colors, all I do is grab the new color, I pull it through that chain, then I'm going to tighten this yellow, I'm going to chain 1, weave in that brown to kind of keep it together, and then I'm going to continue doing 21 single crochets all the way around. Now you're going to see how big of a difference this is compared to this. Might be in the size difference. I'm only going to do 1 row of brown instead of 2 rows, and you could have brown or black, but you can really see with the different 2 tones what I am talking about with the last stitch that we stitch into, and you don't stitch into this one because this is attached to that last stitch for the first chain that you did on your previous row. So we're going to slip stitch it together, and then you would do chain 1 and continue doing 21 rows of the brown or black, but since I am switching out, I'm going to be doing a color change, and I'm actually going to do that on camera in part 2. I have ran out of time for part 1.